Carl Jung, the philosopher and alchemist, put it best when he said, enlightenment is not just imagining figures of light, it is making the darkness conscious, making it conscious through action, making people to change their minds. Obviously, you can't force that change, but you could influence it. And he goes on further to say in that quote that that latter procedure, the one that he mentioned last there, okay, is very unpopular because it's very difficult. It is difficult. It requires the most effort, and therefore most people don't want to do that work. They want to complain about someone else. They don't want to actually change themselves. And this doesn't mean that you can't say someone is responsible for their actions and point out what they're doing is wrong. That isn't what I mean by pointing fingers. I mean really thinking that it's just a small group of people at the top who are the cause of all the problems that have beset humanity, that nothing could be further from the truth. These people are influencing people, yes, but they're not the ones actually taking the action. They get other people to take the action through influencing their minds. And in their spiritual weakness, these people at the bottom, many, many, many more of them than there are these mind controllers at the top of this hierarchical pyramid of control, they're the ones who go out and take the action. They're the ones who bear all of the culpability and the karmic consequences upon their soul. It isn't the elite going out with machine guns and gunning people down. It's not them taking away people's natural law rights by corralling them and putting them in cages for non-crimes and offenses that are made up, that they have no right to take them away for because the people are acting within their rights. No. Police and military do those things. We're going to talk about these two groups of people because this is what the dominator culture is. It's also people who give their consent to those people. It's also the people who think that they're doing a great service to humanity, who think that they're heroes. And again, I'm going to come out and you're going to hear things in this whole section through the non-supportive dominator culture, ladies and gentlemen, that are going to be abrasive, harsh, but they are going to be absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I'm not going to mince any words. I'm not going to pull any punches. So we're going to get into things in this section like repressed sexuality, which I haven't talked much about at all throughout this entire series. But we're going to talk about the sexuality of these individuals and how that plays into how they behave. All right? We're going to get into how religion plays into this in people's minds. We're going to get into the worshipers of the state, their mindset, what made it that way. Why don't people want freedom? Why do they fear true freedom and personal responsibility? What is going on in their psychology, in their psychological makeup that makes them take these stances, take these positions ideologically? So they're all clones, literally, meaning copies of each other. And that's what the dominator culture wants people to become, a carbon copy, something that's not really even alive, something that is made. It is the facsimile of life, made from something that was once alive, but it's just a golem. Okay, it's a golem. It is a thing that is imbued with motion, but it doesn't really have any real life to it. It's not making its own choices or decisions. It's not thinking. It's not feeling. It's just acting. You pull the strings or put the little electrical impulse to it, and then it acts. It jumps. That's it. Its impulses can be completely controlled. And that's exactly as the dark occultists see these individuals. We're going to do a whole show, as I did at the Free Your Mind conference, on how the dark occultists see these individuals. I'll give a whole show, maybe 2 shows to that topic, and we'll go over the occult mockery of the people who are actually the order followers and do the bidding of their masters. It's like a master who hates his dog and just kicks his dog constantly commands it, gets it to do whatever he wants it to do, but he still loathes it with his whole being. Because at some fundamental level, he identifies, how could this dog continue to do what my sick, twisted brain is asking of it? That means it hates itself at some level. That means it so is only concerned about what it can get from me, that it has no care for its own self whatsoever. It is totally given up itself. This is another concept we're going to tie into the non-support of dominators, the concept of the loss of the self. This will be an entire section within this section. I call it, many researchers other than myself have also called it, selflessness. Not selflessness in the sense that you're not selfish, that you care about other people, but selflessness meaning you have actually lost the qualities of the true self. You have become a non-self. The self, the original true self, is gone, and there's only a husk, a shell of what that once was. Okay? They are only the influencers of it, but they are not the ones who actually perform its creation. The police and the military are the ones who actually perform its creation. And if you're having a difficult time with that topic, that gets us to the very first subsection within the solution of don't support the dominator culture. Withdraw your support. Say no to it. Because that involves the getting over of a form of mind control. And it's called emotional mind control. And I have a depiction of it, comical though it may be, in slide number 5.
Moral culpability. What does this mean? The determination of who is ultimately at fault or deserving of blame. Again, this is a legitimate and real concept. There is fault. There is blame. We got to get over this new age nonsense that nobody's at fault, nobody's to blame. You should never say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. That caused a lot of chaos and trauma for other people. You're not to blame. It just happened. No, wrong. The people who did the behavior are to blame. Who carried out the Holocaust in Germany? The people who followed their orders to do it. That's who carried it out. Order followers is the answer. Who carried out the purge of political dissonance in Soviet Russia? Order followers. And they're always in the form of police. Why do you think they call a totalitarian system a police state? Why don't they call it a banker state? How come they don't call it a politician state? What about a lawyer state? How about a judge state? Why not call it any of those things? You want to know why? Because none of those people are ultimately responsible for bringing that condition into manifestation through their behavior. They're the order givers. The order followers carry out their commands and through their behavior make that condition a reality. That's why it's called a police state. Because every police state that has ever existed has always been created by police who follow their orders because they don't want to take responsibility and think for themselves and know the difference between right and wrong for themselves like an adult. Instead, I want to be a child who obeys daddy because I have daddy issues. All right? And that's what it's really about, folks. We're going to get to that. There is such a thing as blame for the commission of actions which have resulted in harm or loss to others. This is what culpable means. It comes from the Latin culpa, meaning fault or blame. It means at fault or deserving of blame. Now, who's more morally culpable? The order giver or the order follower? And please recognize I've underlined and capitalized the term more. I'm not telling you the order givers are not morally culpable. They are. That's not the question. Are any of these people morally culpable is not my question. My question is, look at the full question. Who is more morally culpable? The order giver or the order follower? Always. Always. At all times and places. At all times and places. I put this meme up on Facebook, and I got some hate back for it. Okay? People don't want to hear this. Like I said, I'm not here to be popular to make friends. I'm here to tell people what the truth actually is, and they have to accept it or reject it on their own. I made this meme and put it up on Facebook, and it had politicians on the left that said, my actions, underlined and capitalized, didn't cause that. And then there was some soldiers or Marines, whatever they are, order followers on the right side, and they're also saying the same statement. My actions didn't cause that. And then at the bottom, I just put this question. Oh, I'm sorry. Looks like, oh, I'm sorry. At the top, I put this question. Who is lying and who is telling the truth? So who's lying here? And if people can't see, I hope that they can see this horrific picture. This is the result of, bombings that took place in the Middle East around Iraq. And it's a father carrying his dead child in his arms. Okay? Maybe if bombs were raining down on our children, we might think differently about going in and waging imperialism on other nations. I don't know. Maybe we might think differently about it. Right? But when it happens to somebody else's child, that's okay. That's done in the name of freedom. Okay? Well, who caused this? Did they cause it? No, they didn't cause it. They are not the actual cause of this. Because you know what all they did? They signed some pieces of paper, wearing their expensive suits, okay? And they told these guys, they said, well, you're under our orders now. Go and bomb these people. And you know what these people did? Say, yes, sir, and go and drop the bombs. And fire off the ammunition. Okay? These are the people whose actions create things like this. Not these people. All they're doing is speaking into somebody else's ear. All they've done is speech. Speech, not actions. See, again, really look. My actions didn't cause that. Yes, it is. If these people are saying my actions didn't cause that, they're lying. Very, very, very painful and difficult thing for people to comprehend and accept. I'm not telling you shouldn't feel bad hearing this, but I'm telling you it's true.
So one of the things I want to get back to in talking about with your comment here, Ivan, is that this whole idea of, well, if people don't accept the truth, meaning let's take speed limits for an example, that this road will be safe to navigate at probably no greater than 60 miles per hour. And they want to break that suggestion. They want to go against that suggestion and test the laws of order and chaos. What is it in a human being that insists that, no, they may not do that, and I'm going to absolutely step in and say, I'm going to do something to you to prevent you from doing that? What is it in the person who wants to become that dominator then?
Well, you and I know the answer to that. That's yes. Either, that's, what did you call it? A second level or second degree psychopath?
Well, before it even gets to that level, what's the force that's at work inside of that person that's operating to make them, get to that level of behavior, get to that mode of behavior? It's fear. They're in fear of chaos happening. Okay? They're in fear of chaotic results in the physical world. Okay, that's the main thing that drives it. Right. So, in other words, they're in fear. Well, if people drive this fast, they're going to get hurt. So we have to physically stop them from driving that fast. And therein lies the fundamental flaw. Therein lies the axiom of belief that is fatally flawed from the get-go. If you believe that you're going to physically control people's behavior instead of actually educating them as to the reasons why that certain things are in place, that the reason you should not engage in this type of behavior because it will create a chaotic result, then you're not really doing the thing that will give the best results. You're doing something that is in many ways, or just about in every way, a half-assed effort, because you're saying, instead of teaching why, I'm just going to say you have to do it because I said so and that's how it is, otherwise I'm going to hurt you in some way. What do you think is going to be more received, better received? I have an understanding that maybe perhaps you currently lack, and you need to know what the consequences of that action are going to be. Unwaveringly, in many cases, because the laws of nature work in an unwavering way. Now, maybe you might get lucky, and you might get lucky for a certain amount of time in not having a extremely nasty consequence brought upon you by ignoring certain physical laws and higher laws. But you'll never be able to get away with it indefinitely, and eventually you will be caught up to, and you will experience the extreme negative consequences of poor choice, poor behavior. So the dominator is making a choice and saying, and he's making the wrong choice. He's saying, instead of doing the work, which is much harder to change someone's mind about something, because you have helped to take the time and help to ingrain in them an accurate understanding of causal and governing dynamics that exist inherently in nature. They don't want to do that. That's the hardest work there is to do in life. That is the great work. They don't have the time or patience for that. They just want to say, I'm going to physically stop you from doing it and threaten violence if you do it in some form or fashion. And that's all based on one thing, the fear of chaos. As we talked about in the primal fears section, the ultimate fear that is preyed upon on us every day is the fear of chaos. Chaos is the greatest teacher. I've often said there are two teachers. They're both who I embody or represent as goddesses. There's Isis and there's Eris. Okay? These are like sister goddesses. They're twin aspects of the same force, which is truth. Okay? They're both teaching truth. Isis teaches it with love and compassion in a gentle way. And you have to come to Isis, the gentle teacher, with acceptance, with open-mindedness, open-heartedness, and acceptance. And then you don't need to suffer, because you can take the truth in an open-minded, open-hearted way and then not create suffering as a result. But if you refuse the teachings of Isis, then she turns over the lesson to the disciplinarian, who is Eris, the goddess of chaos. And Eris teaches you in a very harsh, punitive way and says, you ignored the teachings of my better half, Isis. I'm the harsh disciplinarian who is going to bring chaos into your experience because you ignored the higher laws and because you wanted to ignore the laws of nature. And I'm going to explain to you why that's a completely illogical, poor choice that is based in ego, that you don't want to understand how things actually operate here, and that you're under boundary conditions called the laws of nature. And I'm going to bring chaotic results and chaotic experiences into your life so that you can learn that what you did was the incorrect way of going about things. It was the incorrect choice. And then adjust your behavior accordingly. The problem is, yes, go ahead. I'm sorry. You continue, and then I'll add on to it.
No, the simplest answer or correlation to that is the same story that everybody already knows. You can tell someone, you know what, don't put your hand in the fire or you'll get burned.
That's right.
You'll get burned. Well, some of open-mindedness will be, oh, okay, well, why do you say that? Well, because it's happened to me already. Oh, okay, I'll take your word for it. Okay, fine. but you're going to have that other percentage that's going to say, yeah, I don't believe you, and will still stick their hand in the fire and get burned and learn the lesson.
That's correct. So in a lot of ways, we need to almost release attachment from this idea that people should not be getting hurt. The world is a dangerous physical place. There are potential dangers everywhere. Whether you accept that, understand that or not, that's the case. What we need to shed in the way of shedding fear is the fear of chaotic results. Chaotic results, when we make choices, are not horrific outcomes. They are teaching experiences that we need to learn from. The most sinister aspect of this control system is due to the fear of the experience. The control system is trying to sanitize the world from chaotic consequences. This is the most dangerous, horrific thing that could possibly come about, because then the teaching experience that is made possible through chaotic outcome is also sanitized from the world. And people are not apt to then learn what they did wrong and make a different decision. What they're going to keep doing is doing the same thing indefinitely, over and over and over again, continuously creating suffering. And that is what this control system wants. That's what it wants. A prison of suffering from which there is no escape, because there is no opportunity to learn from your mistakes, to learn from chaos. All they want to do is physically control, but never get you to the understanding of the underlying causal principles. And as long as we remain in that level of ignorance, we will never understand why we have made the wrong decision, and we will never understand why it is that we are actually enslaving ourselves.
Yeah, and the hints are all around us in entertainment and media. I have a Dream Theater song here that wants to learn, to pick ourselves up. So if you're always safe and you're always protected, and then it's, everything's all pretty, you're never really going to know
exactly
the picture. You need that balance.
So let's go back to the example of, speed limits on the highway, right? If people want to just flagrantly ignore that, I say wonderful. They should be free to flagrantly ignore it. Now, what will happen as a result? Probably a lot of chaos, right? I'm not even in denial of that. I'm not doubting that. I'm not saying, no, it would be great and everybody would drive 120 miles an hour and there would be no accidents. I'm not saying that. There would probably be a lot of chaos and it would be a dangerous place to even put yourself into. But guess what? I would rather have that than what we have now, because I'm not afraid of that kind of chaos. Because if that kind of chaos erupts, it erupts onto the world because people just flagrantly try to ignore the laws of physics and totally drive as fast as they want, as chaotically and irresponsibly as they want. There's going to be a lot of death. And that would not be a bad thing, because first of all, you would have to ask yourself, why would there be so many people trying to drive like that to begin with? That's first of all a cause, one of the causal factors of that chaos. And you would want to try to get to the root of what's going on in your head, in your emotions, in your thoughts, that you would even express that kind of behavior. See, that's even brought on people's, desire to drive like a maniac is brought on because of how repressed they are. And we would start looking at these things if some chaos like that were interjected into our life and we weren't being sanitized from it all the time. People who are attempting to sanitize the world from chaos are doing one of the most absolutely disruptive, and they're doing something that is a disservice to humanity. We need to embrace not only ISIS, but Eris as well. We need to embrace truth, but embrace the possibility for chaos. That's how we shed our fear. That we say we are willing to allow people to make mistakes, even if they're horrific and result in death. Because we know at some level there is no death. This fear that, oh my God, the world has to be made safe for nothing but infant children, and anything that can't be brought down to that base level, oh, we need to purge and do away with it. This is an asinine child's view of reality that is all based in total fear. 100% fear, and that's ultimately going to do nothing but put you into a prison. You're going to build a...
Yet nothing bad is happening. So if the police state really wanted to rev up a revenue-generating machine, they could certainly do it there. But nothing bad was happening from that. So all these laws that are being created to try to, all these codes that are trying to control us, really doesn't amount to anything other than that juicing the revenue machine and the control mechanisms of the state.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what they are. They're revenue men for the new king that's called government. Exactly. And they don't see that that's the role that they're playing. They actually, believe in their religion called authority, and they accept that, in their own minds, at least, they believe that they're doing something that is required and that is good at some level. And they don't understand that what they're doing is, again, one of the biggest disservices that you could possibly do to humanity, because it's all based in fear. It's all based on the idea that you have to control people's actions and you can't let them make their own mistakes. And, again, it's this idea that human beings have to be perpetually safe. If we can't get over that fear of the potential for chaos and suffering to happen in our lives, we can't be free. It's an impossibility.
Hey, I've never been burned by a cup of McDonald's coffee because I read the warning label.
Right. And you have some common sense, so you understand that that's going to burn you. So you try to avoid that outcome. And you do that because you have some self-respect. People who drive like a maniac obviously don't care about whether they hurt themselves or anybody else. See, it's all about care. It's all ultimately about respect. If you love yourself, you're not going to go out on the highway and drive like a lunatic, because you care about what would happen to you first and foremost, actually. Even if you didn't care about other people, a person who's even totally self-centered, from a selfish perspective, wouldn't drive like an animal because, he cares enough about himself that he wants to stay alive. But when the ego is so run amok that you don't even care about yourself, then it's all me, I, but not even from a perspective of self-respect or self-care, true self-care. It's like you don't care about anything. You don't care about what could possibly happen to other people. And most of all, you don't even care about what could possibly happen to yourself, So that's all based on the lack of self-love, an attitude like that. And I would also say that the lack of knowledge and self-respect is displayed in police and other control-based institutions, because they're in this fear-based consciousness that, they have to control the outcome and they have to sanitize the world from the possibility of chaos happening. And again, both of those things are only going to lead us into a deeper and deeper prison society until we understand these dynamics from a philosophical point of view and from a deep perspective of working with this shadow material, if you will, within the humans.
I'm a peace officer.
Right.
I'm a peace officer in the traditional sense of how the founders thought about the way that we govern ourselves within this country, and it's based on the natural law. So the whole idea of some state trooper sitting behind a billboard with a radar gun is so antithesis to the whole idea of what it is to be a free individual.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that, as more and more people wake up, I'm seeing, and I'm really getting a very positive feeling about that we can take this thing back. It's going to work. We're going to continue to have to work at it. The education process is just daunting.
If I thought there was a zero probability that it could be reversed, I probably wouldn't say a word. I wouldn't come out and say a word. But, even if it doesn't work out that way, we still have to continue on and speak the truth and do what we know to be right. And that's why I do what I do. I'm kind of detached from the outcome. Whatever outcome is granted, I'm prepared to handle. I'm psychologically prepared to handle whatever does come down the pike. But I do still think that we can turn this around. Otherwise, like I said, I probably wouldn't be saying a word. So I definitely think that that's a healthy attitude to take. And you brought up really good points. I thank you for calling in. And I want to comment on one of the things that you talked about, which is, that we have to reach out to people and educate them. And so I commend you on what you're doing in trying to help to reach the dominator's mindset, to reach their, entire way of seeing the world, their worldview, and try to change that from the inside by working with them in that respect. And I think, we could go back to this speed limit analogy that Ivan brought up. Even if chaos happens as a result of people ignoring these laws, whose responsibility ultimately is it? It's all of the people, because they didn't work with each other to bring an understanding of, the causal dynamics that could lead to these negative consequences to each other. They didn't work to educate each other. It was ultimately ignorance that led to that chaotic condition, and the willingness to allow that ignorance to grow and spread unchecked. So that's why we all have to make the realization, we all have to come to the realization that the real great work is the work of education. It's the work of working with people in a one-to-one basis, and if you can in a wider scale, in a bigger scale, if you have access to certain kinds of media, to help them to gain an accurate understanding of these laws that we're talking about, so that they can make good choices that are in harmony with nature's laws, and therefore they don't create all kinds of suffering for themselves and others and put the world into a deeper condition of darkness. Okay, and that's why we're in this mess, folks. We're in this mess because of that level of emotional mind control. That people can't separate out their feelings, and they want to graft their feelings onto an external situation, feelings that they have for an individual. And often it's because they know someone who was involved in these institutions. And so do I. My grandfather served in the military. So did my father. Okay? It doesn't make one iota of difference. I would tell them that they really deeply did not have an understanding or a true possession of what a conscience actually is. And there's a reason for that. Okay? So in looking at the images on the slides on the radio show page, 1, 2, and 3 are images that have been up there over the last few weeks. Okay, this is the section called The Way Out in the series of talks or presentations or radio shows, however you want to look at them. I put the actual solutions that I have listed in the next slide, slide number 2. Slide number 3 is the solution known as the non-supportive dominators. And this, we have talked in this section about knowing what conscience really is. It is the possession of the definitive knowledge of the difference between right and wrong under natural law. And that definition for what conscience really is given on slide number 4. And conscience, of course, comes from the Latin language consciere, which means to know together. Okay? Con meaning together, prefix, and sciere, meaning to know. So it's common sense, knowledge. Okay, this is something that we should know together, that we should be in common possession of. Conscience is about ownership. It is about possession of knowledge, having knowledge, not having an opinion. Conscience has nothing to do with an opinion. It has nothing to do with feeling about information. It only has to do with whether you definitively know whether something is right or wrong. That's it. And that can be known, because right and wrong are not subjective. They are not something that are open to interpretation or likes, dislikes, feelings, anything like that. They are objective realities in natural law that work 100% flawlessly 100% of the time. And people have a problem with that because they don't like to hear that anything is absolute. We've been brainwashed into thinking that the entire universe is something that is relative, and it is not. When it comes to natural law, there is no relativity. Relativity does not apply to behavioral consequence laws. And maybe we should stop even referring to it as natural law, because people go to Darwinism when they hear the word natural. That's where their mind has been conditioned through mind control to go. Oh, you're talking about the survival of the fittest. No, I'm not talking about survival of the fittest, not in any way, shape, or form. I'm talking about the antithesis of survival of the fittest. I'm talking about survival of those who really understand the laws of nature and have raised their consciousness up to a higher plane to understand causality. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about natural law. But unfortunately, most people's brainwashed mind cannot take in the concept of a word that is carried by the word natural. They immediately think Darwinian evolution and survival of the fittest. And the law of the jungle, meaning, oh, let me just take whatever I can and do whatever I can to you to survive. That's not what natural law is. They immediately think of animals and law of the jungle as it has been, indoctrinated into people's minds to believe. We should maybe start calling it the laws of behavioral consequences. That there are inescapable consequences for the result of the behavior that we enact into the world. That we will experience that which we put out, period. That there is no escape for that. And unfortunately, people's behavior is completely in contradiction to natural law, is completely in contradiction to conscience and right from wrong, and therefore they're bringing more and more chaos into the world as a result of this lack of understanding and their behavior that is in opposition to the laws of behavioral consequence. And until they make that recognition and then adjust their thoughts and then subsequently adjust their behavior to align it with the laws of behavioral consequence, or in other words, conscience, don't expect the external conditions ever to improve, ever, because the laws of reality and the laws of the universe do not function that way. They do not allow for that level of ignorance. You are going to be bringing on negative results, meaning suffering, pain, chaos unto yourselves and others for as long as you continue to break those laws of nature. The end for all time. It doesn't make a difference what you think about that. That's the reality that we are all living in, whether any of us like it or even understand it or want to recognize it. That's it. It's not because I said so either. And again, if you're just thinking, oh, I don't like the way he just explained that, that seems arrogant, that he's so cocky and sure of that. Well, you're under emotional mind control because you're not actually hearing the information. All you want to hear is how it's being delivered. And I'm not going to back down on how I deliver something. And there's a reason for that. Because in a lot of ways, I'm not trying to reach the people that are under deep emotional mind control. I'm trying to reach people who can work with them and help to take them out of that state. The exercise of conscience is the willful choosing of right action over wrong action. The willful choosing of right action over wrong action. Once that definitive knowledge of the difference between right and wrong has been acquired. It's that simple. You now know what the difference between a right and a wrong is. So therefore, you willfully choose only to exercise actions which are your right to take. And you say no to doing things which you know, definitively know, you do not have a right to take. Actions which you do not have a right to take. It's that simple. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I've said this before many times, it is so much more about what we need to stop doing, what we need to say no to. And that's why in the second part of the show today, I'm going to be explaining the entire dynamic of apophasis, or saying no. The most powerful word in the universe, no. We have to understand this word. We have to use it. And the New Age movement people won't be happy about that, and tough. You know, they want to make everything about affirmation and nothing about negation, when in fact it's almost entirely about negation. It's almost entirely about the refusal of things, recognizing them as that which will lead to chaos and suffering, and saying, no, I will not go there. I will not do that. And sadly, there's so little courage in the world to make that statement.